let's talk about some of the news and rumors coming out of Sunday's loss for Cleveland. A deflating performance after two strong outings at home against Pittsburgh, on the road against Denver, and then lose by 13 against Pittsburgh. And a lot of it comes down to special teams. So let's talk about the first change the Browns need to make, and that is on special teams. Now, we often hear offense the third of the game, defense the third of the game, special teams is the third of the game. It's not actually an even split like that, right? I mean, special teams is not on the field for a third of the snaps, but we often give it a little bit too much, I'd say, credit or emphasis. But in this case, we need to acknowledge that special teams, I would say, somewhat single-handedly sunk the Browns on Sunday. Dustin Hopkins has gone from bad to worse. He missed 2 field goals, both very makeable, 38 yards and 43 yards. He is now 16 of 25 on the year. That's a field goal percentage of 64%. It is the worst in the NFL amongst qualifying kickers. And I took it one step further. That is the second worst mark for any kicker with a minimum of 20 attempts in the last 15 years, slightly being edged out by 2012 Mason Crosby. So not in good company right there, although Chris Boswell obviously turned things around after a bad 2018 season. Like Adam Vinatieri's on this, but that's the end of his career. Janikowski's on it, and Gostkowski's on it, but also towards the end of their career. So some notable names, but not a very good company to be in. So Hopkins, to me, is on the hot seat without question. And now we're starting to wonder whether the Browns should just move on from him instantaneous right now or give him time until the end of the year to figure things out. I'll ask you really quickly, and then I'll give you my response in a moment. But do you want the Browns to cut Dustin Hopkins? Do you want to get that tweet right now of the Browns have decided to move on from Hopkins? Give me a yes or give me a no down below in the comment section. Now, unfortunately, if you are in the yes camp, it's not that simple. If you remember, the Browns gave Hopkins an extension back in July, which has not aged well since then, and it's a reason why a lot of people don't like giving guaranteed money to kickers because that position can be so fluid. But all I look at when it comes to moving on from players is the guaranteed money. The $15.9 million is useless. We want to know about the guarantees, and there's $8.3 million, and we're not even through the first year of that $8.3 million contract. So if the Browns were to cut him after the season is over, it would cost them $5.6 million in dead cap money, and there are no savings. There are negative savings. I don't even know how that exists, but there are negative savings to be had if you were to move on from Hopkins. So with that in mind, my instinct tells me that the Browns are going to look at his entire career and notice that 2024 season is the outlier after a very strong 2023 season, 2022, 2021, and decide, no good savings to be had. $5.9 million is not going to make or break the books, but it's not going to be helpful when we're already in a little bit of a pinch as we're below the salary cap for 2025, and there's a big looming question regarding Deshaun Watson's contract. So do we want to add more fuel to the fire? Probably not. And that might not be what you want to hear. And I'm with you right there because Hopkins has cost this team games point blank. I mean, if he makes those 2 field goals to close out the first half and open up the second half, it's a tied ball game, 13-all, midway through the third quarter, and that can dramatically alter the course of the game. Instead, we don't get to talk about the Browns sweeping the Steelers for the first time since 1988. We don't get to talk about the Browns winning in Pittsburgh for the first time since 2003. We get to talk about this team being 3-10. So what's likely going to happen versus what you want to happen are very different things. What's likely going to happen is the Browns are going to give Dustin Hopkins the next 4 games to figure his shit out. And over those next 4 games, if he can just show some level of improvement to make the front office semi-okay with bringing him back for another season, that's likely what is going to happen. So I would not bet my money on Dustin Hopkins getting released or getting moved on from after this season. They are probably going to look at the guaranteed money they just gave him in July and go, there's been a bad year across the board. Let's just shake some other things up, which we'll talk about in a moment, and keep Hopkins as our starter. Before we move on to the rest of today's episode, Quick request. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, consider doing so. We're 685 away from my Christmas present, which is getting to 40,000 subscribers here at the Cleveland Browns Report. So if you want a free Browns YouTube channel that's going to keep you up to speed on all things Brownies, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. Speaking of special teams, it wasn't just Hopkins who kind of cost this team this game. Kadarius Toney did not make things better. One, he cost them 15 yards with the taunting penalty, and then he turned right around and he fumbled it the next punt return. So, yeah, not very good right now for Bubba Ventrone, the Browns special teams coordinator. Someone's going to have to get fired after this year, right? You don't go 3 or 4 wins. Let's say they win 4 games. They win one more out of these last 4. You don't go 4-13 and bring everyone back, right? As the head coach, when you meet with the owner as a season-ending performance review and you lay out the way you're going to turn things around, the first question is going to be, well, who we bringing in to change things up? Because we can't roll it back with the exact same coaching staff. And Bubba Ventrone, who I loved the hire, came over from the Colts, unfortunately has lost his fastball this year. I'm not quite sure how it got to this point, but it's gotten to this point, and there's no improvement. In fact, it's just getting worse and worse. There's very little spark at all from special teams, and it's just a detriment to the team. It is severely handicapping them. So someone's going to get fired, and a good chance it's not the guy that has $8 million guaranteed. It's probably going to be Ventrone. Before we talk about Jameis Winston and whether or not the Browns are going to move on to Dorian Thompson-Robinson after another turnover-filled day, big shout out to our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has this awesome feature called Game Time Picks. And what that does is it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. That way you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. One thing I love about Game Time is they're all in pricing option. When you toggle this feature, it shows the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. If you want to go watch Ohio State lose to my Tennessee Volunteers next Saturday, use Game Time, and I'll see you in Columbus because you know I'm going to be there. So download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So should the Browns stick with Jameis Winston? My answer is yes, and so is Kevin Stefanski's. In his Zoom press conference with the media today, there was some chatter about whether or not the Browns should turn to Dorian Thompson-Robinson after 2 interceptions from Winston. It's been a long string of turnovers, and Stefanski squashed that idea. It's going to be Jameis, and that's the right decision as well. I know that DTR is young, and it's a draft pick, so you always have a little bit more hope than an older veteran player who we've seen more from, but the truth is, Jameis is better than DTR, and I don't have expectations for DTR to become this team's starter in the future at any point, so why not roll with the better quarterback other than just punting on Jameis just for the sake of tickling that itch of, but what if DTR is good? We've seen enough of DTR, I think, at this point to know he's not going to be this team's full-time starter in the future. So why derail 52 other players' efforts just to satisfy that itch of the unknown for DTR? It's not unknown. We know it by now. I do think we've seen enough from 17 to confidently say he is not going to be a long-term starting quarterback for this team. But we can't acknowledge that Jameis has been Jameis, and this is the price you pay when you have Jameis as your quarterback. I mean, the turnovers through the first 7 weeks of the season, 8, 12th best in the NFL. Weeks 8 through 14, 13, dead last in the NFL. Right back to where they were last year, where they led the NFL in turnovers with 37. So the Jameis up and down experience is hitting a little bit down right now. It's not so fun anymore, is it? It's kind of like that scene in Remember the Titans. Football is fun. First you think, now you know. Well, I think right now we know football has not been very fun. And it was fun earlier because this team was bad. So take the touchdowns with the interceptions. At least there's points on the board. At least we're entertained. Now it's starting to wear off a little bit, which is what I was kind of preaching over the last 2 weeks, that Jameis is a lot of fun for everyone else to watch the Browns, right? When the Browns were on Thursday night and Monday night back-to-back. everyone was grateful that at least the Browns, despite being a bad team, were entertaining. It's fun for you guys. It's not so fun for us to watch this team constantly turn it over. And so, do the Browns have a better option than Deshaun Watson or Jameis? Probably not. Is Jameis a better option than Deshaun Watson? Probably. I mean, look at their numbers this year. There is no question that the offense was better with Jameis Winston. Now, the offensive line got healthy and improved. The penalties went down. The drops went down. So those are fair things to point out that happened when Watson was under center. But even if you gave Watson, I think, what Jameis has been working with over the last 6 weeks, the offense would not be nearly as good. So, yes, there are more turnovers, but there are more wins that come with it. I mean, one more, so not a huge, startling jump right there. But when it comes to whether or not the Browns should bring back Jameis for 2025, I kind of maintain the same opinion I've had over the last month, which is let's see how the rest of the season pans out. We don't need to make a decision right now, right? And my guess is Jameis will come back in 2025 because Deshaun Watson's not going to be ready. Plus, I don't think they want to even start Deshaun Watson. And they can kind of camouflage that behind his rehab and his injury. But there's a very good chance that Watson misses the spring, misses OTAs, misses minicamp, and Jameis is the starter then. And then training camp rolls around, and they'll probably try and walk this fine line of Watson's technically our starter-ish. We don't want to come out loud and say we're officially benching him, but we're just going to say it's because he's injured. And that's probably when Watson will stop showing up to practice like he did in Houston, and that's when things are going to go horribly, horribly south. But for now, I think Jameis is on a path if he continues to play at the same level he has played over these 6 starts, which is a big enough sample size to have a pretty good idea as to who he is in Kevin Stefanski's offense. It's fair to say that the offense is better with Jameis. He's still not a perfect quarterback, but you may not have a better option, right? This is not a quarterback-loaded draft class. It's not like last year where if Cleveland picked 8, they could get a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix or a J.J. McCarthy, who would be a pretty, intriguing option. No, there's probably only 2 quarterbacks that go round 1 this year. Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. And they're probably going to go 1 and 2 to the Raiders and Giants, who are both picking top 2 and both desperately need a quarterback. So with that, you don't have a great option in the draft. Who are you going to find in free agency that's any better? At least Jameis kind of knows the offense, and I don't think it's going to be a good move for Andrew Berry for a 3rd straight year to move on from a backup quarterback that was better and kind of more popular than Deshaun Watson, Brissett, Flacco, and Jameis. Make it 4 in a row? Unlikely to me. So with that, I'm guessing Winston returns, probably starts, probably gets benched after 3 or 4 weeks. Watson probably comes back in and plays better than he did last year, and we're left confused as fuck. So that's where we stand things right now. But let me know, do you want Jameis to start in 2025? S for start or P for pass? Before we get on out of here, I do want to show some love to the Brown and Orange Club. Thank you guys for always going above and beyond to tune into our watch parties, show us some extra support. Really appreciate what you guys are able to do week to week. So if you want to get added to the club, come hang out with us during our watch party on Sunday for the Browns-Chiefs game. All right, that will do it for us on today's episode. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I'll see you all later.